Greater Shepparton Lighthouse Project is a community organisation that was formed in 2014. We use a collective impact approach to our work, which means we align between the business sector, community organisation and government departments, so social services and education. And what we do is we look at the issues in our community and we try and align our solutions around that so that we're all working to the same common agenda, which for us in Greater Shepparton is to improve outcomes for young people from conception to career. We also use a very place-based approach to our work, which means that, for example, solutions to problems that are evident in Melbourne, for example, aren't really going to work when you just take that and try and apply it to the problems in Greater Shepparton, because as you know, our community in Greater Shepparton is very diverse and has unique and specific needs. So it's about recognising that solutions to local problems, they have to be local solutions. The other thing that we really focus on is asset-based community development. So this is the understanding that to solve issues and problems in the community and social issues, we really need to focus on what's strong about our community and not what's wrong with our community. So we try and be really solution focused, and we look at the assets within our community and the assets that different people have themselves. And we see that those people and their strengths are the way that we're actually going to solve problems and bring about positive change. So we do a lot of work in, I suppose, talking to our community and understanding what they bring to the table and how they can be part of the solution, because we like to, a kind of motto and way of working is that we'd rather hold hands and walk together than act like we're a model that is trying to give people a hand up. We're sort of, we're in this together and we're working together to solve these problems. It's not thinking that that our way is right and that we're trying to lift you up out of something. We want to walk together, to solve the local problems. Sustainability is really important with the kind of work that we do. So there are a few different ways in which Lighthouse has been set up to ensure that, regardless of any one person, that this work continues into the future. So a really interesting way that this has been achieved is through our collaborative leadership tables. So I coordinate one of our collaborative leadership tables. We have a youth table and another table of volunteers that focuses on the early years, and also my group, which focus on the secondary school space and the transition to work and further study. So basically a leadership table is a group of community members that have all volunteered to put their hands up and come together to try and help us with our work. So we launched our collaborative leadership tables at the beginning of 2018, and we had over 50 community members that put their hands up wanting to be part of the solution. So basically what we've done is we've got people from education, people from services, people from private business, and they could be working mums. So a whole different range of people throughout our community that have come together because they all care and they want better outcomes for our young people. And what that's allowed us to do is it's allowed us to have many different opinions, and also each different person has different skills and resources and connections. So we've been able to harness all of that and apply it to social issues within our community. The other thing that that's done, not only has it allowed us to have better insights and really drive our work forward, but it's given ownership of the work to many different people within the community. So these people, they will either advocate strongly, so they'll be out in community and they'll be talking about what are the issues, so things that have come out of the 1,000 conversations. They can speak with authority because they know what young people and people in our community what they need and want to move forward. Also, they get in there and they actually do the work. So they're not just out there talking about it and promoting the work. They're actually in there giving up their time, volunteering, coming into schools, raising funds, researching, looking at data and bringing together multiple different views of how to apply it to a problem. And the other thing is they can be really good strategic thinkers. So some of the people that are on our community organisations, they might be the head of the local bank, for example, or the catchment management authority. So we're sort of saying they have a really unique way of thinking and solving problems. So we want to harness that way of thinking and apply it to issues that have come up in our community. So that's one way that we embed, I suppose, our way of working throughout the community. We don't try and own it. So everything that we do, we try and start things that then become something that a school can take over or a community group can own. So I suppose what we're doing is we don't want to hold the power and control over something. We find that we have better outcomes when we actually disperse that to all the members of our community, because then they have an interest and they want to drive it forward themselves. We've got all of these people in our community now who are passionate and have the understanding. They have the insights from our 1,000 conversations. They have access to all of our data, and they have a really deep understanding of what the issues are in the community and what's needed to bring about change. And I suppose they have an appreciation of our way of working at Lighthouse. So I suppose what we're trying to do is skill up the community to take on board this work and own it moving forward, so that if we're not here, the work continues.
So the model we use is called collective impact. It's place-based model, and that means that we work, as it would suggest, in place. They're unique local solutions for local communities. When we started thinking and talking about this right back in 2011 and 2012, new information was coming out of Stanford University in the US about this way of working. And what it's based on is the fact that when you have a problem about why a kid isn't thriving at school, there could be a whole raft of reasons. It might be that they're having problems at home. It might be that they have poverty at home. It might be that they're being bullied. It might be that they have a learning problem that's never been diagnosed. There's this whole suite of problems around why a kid might be struggling. When there's a whole lot of elements to a problem, that's called a wicked problem. And when you have wicked problems, they don't have a single answer. So one program won't address it, one literacy program or one housing program. There's a whole raft of things that need to come into play to understand what's happening. And so that is the notion behind collective impact, that you bring a whole lot of organisations together and you bring a whole lot of individuals together, and you look at best practice, and you look at, you bring a raft of skills around a problem and you tackle it together. That means we've got lots of partners. So we've got more than 100 partners, and those partners are from government and they're from business. There are other agencies and organisations like Save the Children or Golden Valley Pregnancy Support. We also connect with organisations such as funders. So the Department of Education that runs schools also funds Lighthouse. Philanthropy funds us. Philanthropy is where generous individuals or organisations say, look, we've got enough money and we want to share it and we want to do that for the common good. And so we tap into philanthropy, and so we have received hundreds of thousands of dollars from philanthropy because they've looked at our data and they've looked at our evidence and they've agreed that a change needs to happen and that this is a good investment.
Gaining trust within our community and within groups that we work with is essential to our work. If we don't have mutual trust, we really are not in a position to be able to move forward and achieve anything. So it is crucial that our community and members of our group work, trust what we're there for. And I think the way that Lighthouse has done this exceptionally well is by using that model of the 1,000 conversations essentially at the start, by deeply listening to our community, we had a real first-hand understanding of what the issues were and what needed to change. From there, we created all of our strategy around all of our work and our programs moving forward based on that information. And I think people saw in the community that we did exactly what they had asked. And the fact that we don't assume what the solutions are, we actually ask, what do people need? You gain huge respect by doing that. And it means that we as employees, we know we are doing the right work and the very best work for our community. So that's one way we've achieved trust. The other way, I think, is talking about that model of asset-based community development again. The fact that we want to work with community, and that we don't think that our way is better, or that it's the way of looking at it that, there's not something wrong, that there is a strength there, and that we want to work together to solve those issues. Within our collaborative leadership tables, managing group dynamics and achieving trust were two really important things early on. So as a facilitator of one of those collaborative leadership tables, I think the way that I achieved that was just creating a really safe space for everyone. So when the group first formed, we did things like, instead of just making it like a boardroom and a boardroom meeting style, I would do things like, book us in a private room at a cafe, and we would have finger food so that we could all sit and talk at the start of a meeting and get to know one another, share some food together. We call our Lighthouse group our Lighthouse family, and our extended family are our volunteers and the people we work with in our community. And I think that is the way we truly view the people that we work with and alongside. So I think that was huge in sort of establishing that trust early on. Group dynamics is another thing that, as I mentioned earlier, that we are bringing together essentially different groups of people from different sectors within the community. And that in itself, there are benefits because we get beautiful, multiple, rich perspectives, but there are sometimes issues that arise because people have very differing opinions. So managing group dynamics can sometimes be difficult, but I think it's about just that mutual respect of letting people be heard. And sometimes we do have to manage if things start to get a little bit tense at times. It's just about knowing that it's a safe space. Everyone has their right to an opinion. Your opinion will be heard, and we all have a right to an opinion though. So it's about balancing that out. And then I think what Lighthouse does really well is we always bring it back to why we're here. Sometimes people can maybe have their own lens on things and maybe have an ego that makes them think that their way is right or better. But because our lens is that we are here for the community, our job as Lighthouse facilitators is to remind people that our lens is what's best for our community and what's best for our young people. So anytime things might get a little bit tricky in a meeting, just bringing it back to reminding people why we're here and why they've volunteered and put their hand up, that has been really effective in terms of shifting focus. And another thing, I guess, is the findings from our 1,000 conversations. I know I'm talking about a lot, but it has been the best foundation for our work, because sometimes if people have a differing opinion and they want to argue about something, we have the evidence right there and we can say, well, that's great that you feel that way, but that's not what we understand to be true. Because when we asked the community, we spoke to 524 young people under the age of 25, and this is precisely what they said. So it's really hard to argue when we know that we have spoken to our community and this is the real issue. It just gives us the peace of mind that we're doing the right work and we can move forward. And if people want to argue, then they can't really argue with that. So I suppose that's been really handy. But all in all, these are volunteers who are putting up their hands, giving up their time. So the group dynamics thing hasn't really been too much of an issue because they're all great people that only want the best for our community. So it's been a real pleasure to manage these collaborative leadership tables. When we first embarked on the 1,000 Conversations, we've done this consultation twice, in 2015 and in 2018. So I commenced with Lighthouse in 2018 and it was one of the first things I did. So I'll be speaking about the 2018 1,000 Conversations. But essentially what we did was we went out and we spoke to 1,000 people in our community. 524 of those people were under the age of 25 years old. So I went into schools, alternate settings. I went to the Education Youth Foyer, speaking to kids that were at risk of homelessness. I went into a drug rehabilitation centre. We had other facilitators going out into businesses, community groups, multicultural groups, different religious groups. We really wanted to get a huge cross-section of different people within the community. We asked them those 4 simple questions. And what we did with what we heard was we collated that information and we were able to obviously write a report, but we used what we heard to create our work plans within Lighthouse moving forward. So what we heard actually directly informed our strategy and our way of working within Lighthouse. So some of the things we heard were that young people needed a safe space that they could go to, and have connection to mentors. They could get food if they needed it. They could get advice from a trusted adult. So what Lighthouse did was open the Youth Haven, which is on Wyndham Street, in direct response to that need. The other thing that we heard was that young people were feeling that there wasn't a really direct connection between sometimes what they were learning in school and how that applied to local jobs. And the businesses were saying, we can't get local workers, and why aren't our young people wanting to come into our local business to work, because we've got a massive shortage within that area. So as a result, what we did was created the Curriculum Industry Links project, which I coordinate. And the idea is that we work with teachers in school to show students what's out there within our community and what opportunities there are locally for further study and for employment pathways.
Really, all of our work is about connection. We've noticed that people who do well, kids that thrive, have a lot of connections. So anything we do, we build in connection into that. So any project we set up, it's about mentors, it's about role models, it's about access and opportunity, because we know that really works to help kids get on in life. So the 1,000 Conversations was really about connection. It was about going into homes and workplaces and so on and listening. Our facilitators had to listen very carefully. They had to not bring their own bias to what they were hearing, and they had to understand the conversations and what people were trying to explain to them about issues impacting on young people. So the conversations happened around the table, 8 or 10 people coming together to discuss these questions that we posed to them. And then that was used we brought all of that back together and we looked for common themes. So a theme might have been housing or transport or bullying or literacy. And we put all of those themes, we looked for all of the information that our facilitators had gathered. We put it together and we broke it down under these themes, and then we documented that in a report, and then we used that report to inform our decision making and to write our strategy and our plans. So they had to manage what people were saying, whether it was very personal, whether it was common knowledge, whether it was hearsay, whether it was gossip. They had to try and understand what people were saying and why they were saying it. I don't think we had anyone raise really, really personal information, for example, about, say, sexual or physical abuse or something. But they did raise personal things about how worried they were about their grandchildren, or about how worried they were about, a particular experience of bullying their child might have had. So we didn't have to alert the police or anyone to anything we heard, but we did take it very seriously and think very hard about what it meant for kids in Shep. And we were a bit surprised by the results. And we did hear a lot about kids struggling really with things like mental health issues, depression and anxiety, and bullying, and perhaps feeling lonely, not feeling as connected as they could be or should be. What we found was that people really wanted to engage about this. We found that they really wanted to talk about what's happening for kids in Shep, what's working and not working. I think it's important to point out that, Shep isn't a basket case. These problems are issues all around the world, and that there are solutions and things. It's really possible to make change, especially when you're looking so deeply and intently at things. So what we found was that people were very willing to talk about these issues, and that they wanted to talk about them, and they wanted their voices heard. And when they believe that you're doing it for the right reasons and for the community, and you're listening very carefully, what we found is that they were very willing to share, but they're also willing to be part of the solution. So we found that they often would say, and we asked the question, they often said, yes, I would like to be part of the solution. I would like to volunteer. I've got some ideas. I'd like to get involved. So we've really created a movement, a cultural change in the town, where people have said, I want to be part of that. What do I need to do, and how do I be part of the solutions? So they weren't just blaming the government or blaming the schools. They were saying, yeah, maybe some kids are lonely. Could I be a mentor? Or could I help with reading? And so what we found was this whole raft of people out there willing to help.
The other really important thing that we were able to do with all the information that came out of the 1,000 conversations, obviously it was de-identified, so we don't quote who told us what, but what we're able to do at a higher level is use that information and advocate. So we'll write papers and recommendations to government to make changes in certain areas where we know there are huge issues in our community. So one example that's being worked on at the moment is within the transport issues that are being faced by young people in particular that rely on public transport within Shepparton and Mooroopna. So yeah, we took all of that information, and then we go away and we deeply look at it, and we research, and we find out who are the right people to talk to, whether it's ministers, local members, and yeah, that happens at a higher level. So our executive officer is really responsible for a lot of that work. But at a table level with our collaborative leadership tables, we'll deeply dissect that information and look at data, and we'll write papers that inform, national inquiries, for example. So yeah, we use the information in different ways. A lot of it's within forming our projects and forming our local solutions, and a lot of it is around advocating for change at that higher level.
I think we've maintained and developed trust with the people in those conversations, and going forward, many of them are our volunteers, because they see how hard we're working to do things not that suit us, but on behalf of the kids. And we work really, really hard at that. And I think they get it, they understand that, and they want to be part of it. So we've found that we've built a lot of trust. It was quite slow building the trust in the schools with teachers and so on, because they were like, well, who's this group? What do they know about education? But what we've found over time is that, again, we've worked really hard to show them how committed we are to them, to the school, to the kids, and we've come up with solutions. And they're pleased about that, and they want to continue working with us. So it's really about the whole community embracing kids, valuing kids, committing to helping kids. And I really hope that you guys are starting to feel that, and you're starting to get a sense that education is really important here, that there's a lot of people willing to help, and that you really only need to put your hand up, and there's opportunities and chances to really fulfill your potential. And I think that everyone deserves that.